Thank you for being here with us and for watching last night. Give us your takeaway from what you saw.
Well, I think they have a very powerful story to tell, Dana, but they've undercut it by not having a fair fact-finding proceeding. You know, I used to prosecute bad guys for a long time. We even let terrorists and mafiosi and scam artists have their own day in court where they get to present their own side of the story. And here what you have is a committee that's all, I mean, the only credential that unifies the whole committee is that they're anti-Trump, which is a perfectly fine attitude to have. But, you know, there's another side to this story, and in a normal fact-finding process, they would get the chance to tell their side of it.
I guess, Andy, I was going into it thinking about what the Democratic member of the committee said a couple months ago. They're going to blow the roof off. So I was waiting for a blockbuster. But perhaps some people perceived there to be a blockbuster there, and others did not. But if you had a blockbuster, would you not reveal it, given the considerably large audience that was watching on all the networks last night?
Yeah, I think that's right, Bill. Also, you know, look, what we know about the people who were on this committee, particularly the Democrats, a lot of whom were on important committees in connection with Russiagate, if there was some blockbuster information that we hadn't heard already, we'd have heard it. You know, they managed to get that kind of information out. So I think what we have is a more graphic depiction of the things that we know already. And what I continue to be baffled by is why they were afraid to let a couple of pro-Trump people be on the committee.
Yeah,
I mean, if you have a powerful story to tell, which they do, what difference does it make if Jim Jordan has a tirade every couple of days? You know, so what? You get to the bottom of the case.
I wanted to ask you about, in particular, on the officer who, and she was very compelling, and I'm so sorry that it happened to her. She's the one that testified last night.
Yep.
But one of the things that the committee consistently is talking about is the officers. Now, the treatment of the officers, if you watch the video, it's horrible. I can't stand it. But some of the fact pattern there, that was not challenged last night?
Right. Dana, they didn't even pretend that there was going to be cross-examination, right? And understand, cross-examination doesn't mean you have to try to take someone's head off. You try to make the points that you need to make. And no one who has a brain, who's a litigator, would have gone after that very impressive officer last night. But some of her testimony was clearly designed to suggest that Brian Sicknick, in particular, the officer who had a stroke, was killed or died because of the riot. And if you had someone cross-examining her, they would have pointed out that, did you know that the medical examiner said he died of natural causes? Did you know that there was no blunt force trauma? Did you know that a member of this committee, Jamie Raskin, filed a brief in the Senate impeachment trial of Trump a month after January 6th, which suggested that Brian Sicknick got his head bashed in when that didn't happen? You know, you would make those points to show, number one, the story's more complicated than they say, and number two, maybe they're not the most trustworthy repositories of the facts.
What's interesting about that comment, I found last night interesting. I don't know what they're going to do on Monday. It's 10 a.m. Eastern time. It's almost like watching a trial is what you're trying to describe to us, and people can listen to both sides and debate it, and it almost becomes more interesting because of that. Nonetheless, that'll not be the case here. I think so. And think about the great culture trial we were just watching for 6 weeks, like Heard and Depp. I mean, we had arguments for months about who was right and who was lying. But nonetheless, we'll see what happens on Monday, and we'll wait for that testimony.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy McCarthy.
Thank you.